Deep in the vastness of space, the Orlux Empire, the most powerful force in the galaxy, controlled countless star systems with an iron grip. They had conquered planet after planet, leaving their enemies broken and their subjects in fear. No one dared to challenge their rule. The galaxy's galaxy-spanning reach had made them arrogant, believing no force could stand against them. But in the quiet depths of space, far from their empire, something was about to change. It started as a whisper, a signal that nobody expected. No one even noticed at first. At least, that's what the Orlux officials thought. They had grown used to scanning the vast distances for threats, whether from other empires or rebel factions, and they were very good at it. For the most part, the galaxy was a quiet place, filled with stars, dark matter, and the occasional anomaly. But this signal, it was different. At first, it was a small distortion, just a flicker on their communication systems, a blip on the radar screens, a mistake, they assumed. The signal had no origin, no clear pattern. It seemed random, almost as if it were a malfunction. Yet it was persistent. It repeated itself over and over again, each time slightly stronger than the last. It wasn't long before the Orlux command knew this wasn't a simple glitch. The Orlux Empire's central command, located on the massive capital ship Dominion, was where the most important decisions were made. High Command had ruled over the galaxy for centuries, and the Empire had never faced an enemy they couldn't crush. But now, the head of military intelligence, General Varric, was staring at his console with growing unease. "Sir, there's something you should see," his subordinate, Lieutenant Tanis, said, his voice filled with uncertainty. General Varric stood and walked over to the screen. The signal was still there, pulsing weakly in the farthest corners of space, so far out that no Orlux ship had ever ventured there. But it was clear now that this was no mistake. Something, or someone, was sending this signal. Who could possibly send a signal from that far out? General Varric asked, brow furrowed in confusion. "I don't know, sir," Tanis replied. "But it's coming from a sector that's been completely ignored. It's not on any of our charts, not even as a possible location for life." Varric felt a flicker of doubt. The Orlux Empire's advanced technology allowed them to search the farthest reaches of the galaxy, but this signal was coming from a place that had been deemed completely empty, far beyond the borders of any known species, let alone humans. And yet, this signal wasn't like the random space debris or cosmic radiation they had long grown accustomed to. It was intelligent. "Send a fleet to investigate immediately," Varric ordered, his voice cold and precise. Within hours, a small fleet of Orlux warships, their sleek forms cutting through space with terrifying speed, set course for the source of the mysterious signal. The fleet's command ship, the Inferno, led the way. As they moved deeper into the unknown sector, Varric and his officers waited for the moment they would uncover the source. It could be a stray ship, a new species, or perhaps even a threat they hadn't accounted for. Whatever it was, the Empire had to know. The journey felt endless, the darkness of space pressing in around them. Stars flickered in the distance, and their ships moved in perfect formation. No one spoke much, each person lost in their own thoughts, knowing this mission was critical. But none of them could have predicted what awaited them. The silence in the command room felt heavier as they approached the source of the signal. Then, the Inferno's sensors picked up something. A massive object, far larger than any ship they had ever encountered, appeared on their radar, seemingly out of nowhere. It was dark, almost like a shadow against the backdrop of space, so massive that it obscured entire constellations behind it. The fleet's sensors couldn't even measure its exact size, and its shape was unlike any Orlux warship. It was not a vessel they could identify, nor was it anything that belonged to the Empire's known enemies. "Sir, we have contact," the sensor officer said, his voice trembling with unease. General Varric narrowed his eyes. The feeling of uncertainty was growing in his chest. He quickly ordered, "Activate full shields," and raised the fleet's battle stations. As the fleet closed in, The strange object remained still, its surface gleaming in the dim light of distant stars. The ships of the Orlox Empire were some of the best in the galaxy, equipped with advanced weapons, but this unknown object, this unknown presence, left them feeling vulnerable. "We've got to make contact. Raise the communication channels," Varric said, his voice now cold steel. "Let's find out who dares to challenge the Orlox." But just as the fleet prepared to hail the object, the strange signal intensified, pulsing through space with a deafening frequency. It was as if the object itself had awakened. Suddenly, the distant stars seemed to flicker as if they were alive, and an eerie silence fell over the Orlox fleet. Then the object responded. The massive ship, which the Orlox had first mistaken for a derelict, suddenly activated a series of brilliant lights along its surface, and the signal surged into an intense wave of energy that seemed to shake space itself. The signal wasn't random anymore. It was a message. And that message was clear. The crew of the Inferno looked on in shock as a voice, human, cut through the static, calm but forceful. "This is the Earth fleet," the voice said. "We've come to reclaim our place in the galaxy." The word sent a ripple of disbelief through the Orlox command. Earth. They had long considered Earth a forgotten, insignificant world, nothing but a dying, primitive planet. And yet here was a warship. No, a fleet, capable of sending such a powerful message. The realization hit them like a blast. Humanity, the very species they had written off, was no longer weak. They had returned with force. The Orlox Empire's arrogance had clouded their judgment for too long. They had underestimated humanity's strength, and now they would see what a single human warship could do. The Inferno's crew stared at their screens as the Earth fleet slowly began to deploy, each ship moving with precision, their weapons primed and ready for war. The tension in the command room was palpable. General Varric, stunned but resolute, turned to his officers. "Prepare for battle. This is no longer just a signal. This is a warning." As the Inferno and its fleet braced for the coming storm, the Orlox Empire's fate seemed uncertain. The galaxy had just witnessed the return of humanity. And no one, not even the mighty Orlox, could predict what was about to happen next. The Orlox Empire had never experienced anything like this before. For centuries, their fleets had dominated the galaxy, and their enemies, if they had any, were quickly crushed under the might of their military. But now, after the strange signal and the appearance of the human warship, everything had changed. The once untouchable empire was facing a threat they hadn't even considered. General Varric stood in the heart of the Inferno, the flagship of the Orlox fleet, his hands clenched into fists as he stared at the large holographic display in front of him. The Earth fleet had just made its presence known, and their ships were unlike anything the Orlox had ever seen. The suddenness of the attack, the power behind their weapons, it was enough to shake even the most seasoned officers. "What are we dealing with here?" Varric muttered under his breath. His mind raced, trying to piece together the puzzle of this new enemy. Humanity, Earth, had been nothing more than a forgotten backwater, a planet left to fend for itself in the corner of the galaxy. But now, this mysterious warship, the Vanguard, had appeared, and the Orlox Empire's entire fleet was on edge. The Vanguard was positioned at the edge of the galaxy, right outside Orlox-controlled space, but it was not alone. The humans had brought with them several smaller ships, but it was the Vanguard that commanded attention. The massive warship, sleek and deadly, moved effortlessly through the dark expanse of space as if it had always belonged there. It was powerful, clearly designed for combat. And it was a message, one that the Orlox Empire couldn't ignore. General Varric paced back and forth in the command room, his mind already working to formulate a strategy. He couldn't afford to underestimate humanity. The destruction of the Orlox scout ship was a warning, not just to his fleet, but to the entire empire. The humans were not the weaklings they had assumed. "We need reinforcements," Varric ordered. "Alert the fleet, and prepare for engagement." The Vanguard is a threat, and I want it neutralized immediately. The command room buzzed with activity as officers scrambled to relay orders. Orloc's warships, each one heavily armored and armed with advanced weaponry, were readied for the confrontation. Varric was determined to crush this unexpected enemy before they could cause any real damage. Meanwhile, in the heart of the Vanguard, Captain Ilara Voss stood on the bridge, staring out at the vast expanse of space. Her eyes were focused, her expression calm but resolute. She knew the message they had just sent had not been well received. She could already feel the tension building in the galaxy. The Orloc's empire would not back down easily, but she didn't expect them to. "It's happening, isn't it?" Lieutenant Sarah, her second-in-command, said, breaking the silence. "They're coming for us." Ilara nodded. "They won't stop until they're sure we're a threat. But they'll find out soon enough. We're not backing down." Ilara had been a part of this mission since its inception, since humanity had finally pulled itself together, determined to challenge the oppressive powers that ruled the galaxy. The Vanguard was the culmination of Earth's greatest technological advancements. But beyond that, it was a symbol, a statement to the galaxy that humanity was no longer just a weak, insignificant species. They were a force to be reckoned with, and this was just the beginning. "We'll have to be ready for anything," Ilara continued, her voice steady. "Keep the fleet in formation. When they arrive, we hit them with everything we've got." The first wave of Orloc ships arrived within hours, their enormous warships closing in on the Vanguard at incredible speed. Varric had made his move quickly. He couldn't afford to waste time. The Orloc's fleet was massive, outnumbering the humans by a significant margin. But Ilara was not intimidated. "We're outnumbered, but we're not outmatched," she said, her voice carrying across the bridge. The Vanguard's weapons powered up as Ilara's crew took their positions. The Vanguard wasn't just a ship, it was a mobile fortress. Its advanced shields would withstand anything the Orlocs could throw at it. And its weapons were unlike anything the Orlocs had seen before. When the battle began, it was fierce. The Orloc's fleet opened fire, unleashing waves of energy blasts that lit up the darkness of space. But the Vanguard was prepared. The human ship weaved and dodged, its superior agility allowing it to avoid the worst of the attacks. It returned fire with precision, each blast striking an Orloc ship with deadly accuracy. The Orloc's fleet was used to overpowering enemies, but they were not prepared for this. Their ships were big, heavily armored, and powerful, but they lacked the speed and precision of the Vanguard. The smaller, faster human ships darted around the Orloc's warships, taking them down one by one. The Orloc's fleet was forced to adjust its tactics, but the humans were already one step ahead. General Varric watched the battle unfold on the holographic display. His jaw clenched. The Orloc ships were beginning to fall back. The Vanguard's weapons were too powerful, and the humans knew how to fight. "Retreat is not an option," Varric barked. "We will hold the line. Bring in the reserve fleet from the second sector. We cannot allow this human vessel to remain in our space." The Orloc's empire was not one to retreat. They had never been forced to do so before, but the growing realization that they might not win this fight was spreading through the ranks. They were powerful, yes, but now they were facing an enemy who was not only capable of striking back, but had already done so with deadly force. Ilara stood at the command center of the Vanguard, her hand steady as she issued orders. The battle raged around them, but she was confident in her crew's ability. They had come a long way, and now was the time to show the galaxy that humanity would no longer bow to oppression. "We're doing well," Lieutenant Sarah said, looking at the screens. "But they're not giving up. More ships are coming in from behind." Ilara nodded. "Then we keep fighting. We're here to send a message, and we won't stop until it's clear." As the battle continued, the human ships began to pick off more and more of the Orloc's fleet, and the Empire's pride was beginning to crack. They had never been forced to retreat before, but the fear was growing. The humans were not what they had expected. They were not weak. They were not helpless. And now, The Orlox Empire had to decide. Would they continue their assault and risk complete destruction, or would they retreat and face the humiliation of being outmatched by a species they had once considered insignificant? In the darkness of space, a war was unfolding, one that would change the galaxy forever. The Orlox Empire had underestimated humanity, and now they were facing the consequences. As the battle raged on, both sides knew that this was just the beginning. The battle between the Vanguard and the Orlox Empire had reached a fever pitch. The once mighty fleet of the Orlox Empire was in disarray, with ships falling one after another. The human warship, the Vanguard, and its fleet of smaller ships moved with remarkable speed and precision, striking fast and retreating before the Orlox could respond. The Orlox commanders, who had prided themselves on their overwhelming firepower, now found themselves on the defensive. General Varric was pacing in his command room on the Inferno, his mind racing. The Orlox ships were getting picked off one by one, and it was only a matter of time before the humans would have the upper hand. His fleet had been designed for conquest, not for facing an enemy that was so unpredictable. The humans had brought a level of warfare to the table that the Orlox Empire had never seen. "Sir," said one of his officers, breaking the silence, "the Vanguard is taking heavy losses, but they keep evading our fire. Their shields are holding, and they're using hit-and-run tactics that we can't match." Varric's face was pale, a far cry from his usual confident demeanor. "I know," he muttered. "We've underestimated them. I need more firepower. Bring in the second fleet from the western sector. We need to crush them before they can regroup." As the second fleet moved into position, the battle escalated. More Orlox warships appeared on the scene, adding their firepower to the fray. But it didn't seem to matter. The Vanguard and its fleet were still outmaneuvering them, dodging attacks and picking off smaller targets with deadly efficiency. Meanwhile, on the Vanguard, Captain Ilara Voss was watching the chaos unfold on her screens. Her ship had sustained some damage, but the Vanguard's advanced shields were holding strong. They had been built to survive, to outlast, and now they were proving their worth. The Orlox Empire was a mighty opponent, but they had no idea what they were up against. "Hold steady, everyone," Ilara ordered, her voice calm but filled with authority. "We've got them on the run. Just a little longer." Lieutenant Sarah, standing next to her, looked at the tactical screen. "Captain, more Orlox ships are incoming from the second fleet. They're throwing everything they have at us." "We've been expecting this," Ilara replied, her hands moving over the controls with practiced ease. "We've got enough left to finish the job. Prepare for the final push." The Orlox fleet was growing desperate. Their strategy had shifted from overwhelming force to desperation, but the humans weren't backing down. They were proving that their strength was not in numbers, but in their ability to adapt and fight smart. The humans were proving to be far more formidable than the Orlox had ever imagined. The battle reached its peak when General Varric finally ordered his ships to form a tight battle formation around the Inferno, protecting their command ship at all costs. "The Vanguard will be ours," he declared. "We will end this now." But as the Orlox forces concentrated all their firepower on the Vanguard, something unexpected happened. The Vanguard systems suddenly overloaded, causing a massive burst of energy to surge through the ship. For a moment, the Orlox fleet thought they had won. The ship was going down. But then, the unexpected occurred. Instead of collapsing under the pressure, the Vanguard's core reactor had triggered a system-wide pulse, sending a shockwave of energy across the battlefield. The wave disrupted the Orlox ship's weapon systems, causing their targeting systems to fail. The sudden turn of events caught the Orlox fleet off guard. Their ships, once firing in perfect coordination, now found their weapons offline, and their shields flickered as the human technology outpaced their own. "What just happened?" Varric shouted, his eyes wide in disbelief. "It's some kind of EMP burst," one of his officers reported, struggling to bring the systems back online. "The Vanguard triggered it on purpose." Ilara watched with a sharp eye as the Orlok ships were thrown into chaos. Their lines were broken, their fleets scattered. This was their chance. The humans were quick to seize it. The smaller human ships darted forward, taking advantage of the Orlok's fleet's disarray. The Vanguard fired another round of devastating energy blasts, targeting key systems on the Orlok ships. The result was immediate and catastrophic. One of the Orlok's warships, the Desolator, exploded in a massive fireball, sending debris into the void. Other ships followed suit, each destruction weakening the Orlok's hold on the battlefield. "We've got them," Lieutenant Sarah shouted. "They're retreating." Varric, watching the destruction of his fleet unfold before his eyes, clenched his fists in fury. This was not how the Empire fought. This was not how they won. But the reality was clear. The humans had done the impossible. They had turned the tide of battle, and the Orloks were now on the defensive. "Retreat," Varric ordered, his voice cold with rage. "We will not lose to these humans. Fall back to the second sector now." The Orlok's fleet began to break formation and retreat, their ships limping away from the battlefield as the humans continued to press forward. The once proud empire, with its technological superiority and vast military might, was being humbled by a race they had long considered beneath them. Ilara's voice was steady as she issued the command to her fleet. "Do not pursue them too far. We've made our point. We've shown them that humanity will not be pushed aside." As the Vanguard and its accompanying ships watched the Orlok's fleet retreat, the humans couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. They had not only fought back against an overwhelming enemy, but they had also delivered a clear message. Humanity was here to stay. They would no longer be ignored. But Captain Ilara Voss knew this was just the beginning. The Orlok's empire would not forget this defeat, and they would likely return with a vengeance. But humanity had proven something crucial today. They had proven that they were capable of standing up to the biggest powers in the galaxy. And that made all the difference. The battle was over, but the war had only just begun. After the stunning retreat from the battlefield, the Orlok's empire was furious. Their pride had been shattered. General Varric, humiliated by the defeat, returned to the heart of Orlok space, where he met with the High Command. The Empire had been forced to retreat from a race they had long underestimated. No one in the Empire could believe it. Humans, fragile, insignificant humans, had dared to stand against them and won. But Varric was not a man to dwell on failure. He was a soldier, and his mind already turned toward vengeance. The humans had shown their strength, but the Orlok's empire was far from finished. They would regroup, they would rebuild, and they would return stronger than ever. "You have to act quickly, Varric," said Lord Zalrith, one of the highest-ranking officials of the Empire. "We cannot allow this humiliation to stand. The humans have sent a message, but now we must send ours. We will crush them before they can grow too strong." Varric clenched his jaw. "We will take back our honor. We will crush them. And this time, we'll show them the true power of the Orlok's empire." The empire had the resources, the fleet, and the willpower to strike back. Over the next few weeks, the Orlok's fleet began to regroup and rebuild. They gathered every available warship from across the galaxy and assembled an enormous force. They knew they had to strike hard and fast to prevent humanity from having any time to prepare. If they waited too long, the humans might become an even greater threat. Meanwhile, on the Vanguard, Captain Ilara Voss and her crew were riding high on their victory. They had pushed the Orlok's empire back and sent a powerful message across the galaxy. But Ilara knew better than to get complacent. The empire would not let the defeat slide. The humans had won the battle, but they were still far from winning the war. "We've made a name for ourselves," Ilara said to Lieutenant Sarah as they stood on the bridge, watching the stars ahead. "But this is just the beginning. The Orloks won't forgive us for this." Sarah nodded. "I know. We have to be ready for their next move." As if on cue, their communication officer interrupted the moment. "Captain, "We've detected a massive fleet approaching. It's the Orlocks. They're coming back, and they're coming with everything they've got." Ilara's stomach sank. She knew the day would come, but she had hoped they would have more time. The Orlocks were returning, and they weren't just sending a few ships. This time, it was going to be a full-on assault. "Alert the fleet," Ilara commanded, her voice sharp with authority. "Prepare for battle." The Vanguard and its accompanying ships began to power up their weapons, and the crews sprang into action. The human fleet, though smaller than the Orlocks, was far more agile. Ilara knew that their strength was in speed and precision, not brute force. But even with their superior tactics, they were outnumbered. The Orlocks Empire's new fleet was enormous, each ship more heavily armored and packed with firepower than anything they had faced before. The battle began almost immediately. The Orlocks' fleet arrived in waves, their ships moving like a wall of destruction across the stars. The first salvo from the Orlocks' warships was enough to make the Vanguard's shields flare up with energy. The Orlocks weren't just attacking, they were trying to destroy humanity's fighting spirit. But Captain Ilara was ready. The humans responded quickly, their smaller ships darting across the battlefield with incredible speed, launching precision strikes at the Orlocks' fleet. The Vanguard fired a devastating round of energy blasts, piercing the outer shields of the closest Orlocks warship. The Empire's ships retaliated with overwhelming force, sending a barrage of fire that tore through the dark expanse of space. "We're holding our ground," Sarah said, her voice tight as she monitored the battle. "For now," Ilara replied. "But the Orlocks are relentless. We need to stay ahead of them." The battle raged for hours, the vacuum of space filled with the sounds of explosions and energy blasts. The Vanguard dodged, weaved, and struck with deadly force. But the Orlocks were adapting. Their weapons were powerful, and their fleets seemed to have no end. But still, the humans fought, refusing to back down. As the battle continued, General Varric's face twisted into a smile. His fleet was beginning to overwhelm the humans. They had underestimated the strength of the Orlocks Empire before, but now the tables had turned. The humans' tactics were good, but the Orlocks had the sheer numbers and firepower to crush them. "We will break them," Varric muttered to himself, watching the battle unfold on the command deck of the Inferno. "And we'll make sure they know what it means to challenge us." But just as the Orlocks seemed to have the upper hand, something unexpected happened. A new fleet arrived, cutting through the darkness of space like a lightning strike. The ships were sleek and fast, with human-made markings flashing across the hulls. It was a new wave of reinforcements, and they were powerful. Ilara's heart raced as she recognized the new fleet. It was humanity's secret weapon, new ships, enhanced with technology taken from the Vanguard's victories and the expertise of Earth's brightest minds. These ships weren't just designed for survival, they were built for war. "We're not out of this yet," Ilara said, her voice a mix of relief and determination. "These new ships are going to give us the edge we need. Push forward, people. We win today, or we don't win at all." The Orlocks, caught off guard by the arrival of the new human fleet, began to retreat once again. Their line, which had been pushing so strongly just moments before, began to falter. The sudden influx of new ships allowed the humans to strike back with overwhelming force. The battle was not yet won, but the tide was turning once more in humanity's favor. Varric watched helplessly as the humans pushed back. His plans were falling apart. His fleet was losing ground, and the reinforcements they had brought in were failing to turn the tide. With a final order, he called for a full retreat. "Pull back, fall back to the next sector," he shouted. "We will regroup. This battle is not over." As the Orlocks' fleet retreated once again, Ilara let out a deep breath. The humans had won, but it wasn't just the battle that had been won. It was the hope of the galaxy. The Orlocks had been forced to retreat twice now, and humanity's message had been loud and clear. They were not weak. They were not going anywhere. But Ilara knew the Orlocks would be back. They always came back. And the war was far from over. The victory was hard-earned, but it gave humanity a chance, something they had never had before. Now they had the attention of the galaxy, and they would use it to build a future, one that was no longer under the thumb of the Empire. The galaxy was at a tipping point. After the latest victory, humanity had proven itself capable of standing toe-to-toe with the mighty Orlox Empire. But as General Varric regrouped with his commanders, his determination only hardened. He had lost several battles, but his resolve to crush the humans had not faltered. In his eyes, this war was a matter of pride and survival for the Orlox. And now he had a plan that would end the human threat once and for all. The Orlox Empire was not a power to be underestimated. Despite the setbacks, they still held the advantage in sheer numbers and resources. But one thing was clear to Varric now. Humanity's strength lay not just in their technology or tactics, but in their unyielding will to fight. And that was what terrified him most. As the Orlox fleet prepared for their final assault, the humans did the same. Captain Ilara Voss stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, staring out into the vastness of space. Her mind was sharp, her resolve as solid as the ship beneath her feet. They had fought back twice now, and each victory had cost them dearly. The Vanguard was damaged, her systems running on backup power, but her crew was determined. "Captain, we're receiving a fleet-wide communication," Lieutenant Sarah reported, her voice tense. "It's from General Varric." Ilara raised an eyebrow, knowing that the Orlox Empire would not surrender so easily. "Put it through," she ordered. The image of General Varric appeared on the screen. His face was drawn, his eyes filled with the bitter fury of a man backed into a corner. "This is it, human." Varric's voice came cold and clear. "You've fought bravely, but your time is up. The Orlox Empire will finish what we started. Surrender now, and I will guarantee your survival. Continue to resist, and we will wipe you from the galaxy." Ilara's gaze never left the screen as she stood tall, unshaken. "You've underestimated us from the beginning, Varric," she replied. "And that's why you'll lose. Humanity doesn't surrender. We fight until the last breath." Varric's face twisted into a snarl. "Then prepare for your destruction." The transmission cut off, and the fleet's alarms blared. The Orlox were coming, in full force. "They're bringing everything they've got," Sarah said, scanning the readings. "We've got no choice but to face them head-on." Ilara nodded. "Ready the fleet. All ships, prepare for battle." This is it. The Vanguard led the charge, its engines roaring to life as it surged forward into the heart of the battlefield. Behind them, the human fleet followed, a diverse array of ships, from sleek, fast cruisers to heavily armored warships. They were outnumbered, but they were far from outmatched. The Orlox fleet, now fully assembled, came at them in waves. Their ships were massive, far larger than any human warship. The Vanguard sensors flared as the enemy fleet locked onto them, their weapons powering up. A barrage of energy blasts rocketed toward the human fleet. "Brace for impact," Ilara shouted, gripping the console in front of her. The Vanguard's shields flared as the enemy fire hit, but they held strong. For now. The Vanguard retaliated, launching a series of devastating missiles toward the lead Orlox ship, striking its shields with pinpoint accuracy. The blast sent shockwaves through the battlefield, but the Orlox were relentless. They came back with renewed fury, firing volley after volley, trying to break the human line. The battle was chaotic. Explosions filled the void, and the air crackled with energy as human ships fought tooth and nail to hold their ground. The Orlox Empire had learned from their previous defeats, and their ships were now in perfect formation, each one covering the other. They were a terrifying force, but the humans refused to back down. On the Vanguard, the crew worked tirelessly, coordinating with the fleet to fight back. Ilara's mind raced as she analyzed every move. The Orlox were strong, but they were predictable. They relied on brute force, while the humans relied on strategy. "We can't keep this up forever," Sarah said, her voice strained as she monitored the damage reports. "They're too powerful. We just need to buy time," Ilara replied, her voice calm despite the chaos around her. "Keep them occupied. The reinforcements will arrive soon." But as the battle raged on, the Orlox Empire showed no signs of slowing. They were pressing harder now, closing in on the human fleet. Ilara realized that the time for reinforcements had passed. There was no more waiting. This was their last stand. "Captain," Sarah called out, looking at the tactical screen. "The Orlox flagship, the Inferno, is charging up a massive weapon. It looks like they're preparing for a final strike." Ilara's heart skipped a beat. She knew the Orlox flagship was the strongest ship in their fleet, and if it got a clean shot, it could obliterate the Vanguard and any hope the humans had left. "Activate the pulse cannon," Ilara ordered. "Prepare for a direct hit." Her crew worked quickly, firing up the Vanguard's most powerful weapon. The pulse cannon, a weapon of devastating power, had only been used in the most desperate of circumstances. This was one of those moments. The Orlox flagship, the Inferno, fired first, its massive weapon charging up and unleashing a powerful beam of energy. It hurtled toward the Vanguard, its destructive force nearly overwhelming. But just as the beam was about to strike, Ilara hit the button. The Vanguard fired its pulse cannon, sending a wave of energy that intercepted the Orlox beam in midair. The two weapons collided in a flash of light that could be seen for miles. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Then the pulse cannon's energy surged forward, breaking through the Orlox flagship's shields and striking its core. The explosion that followed was immense, tearing through the Orlox flagship and sending a shockwave that rocked the entire battlefield. The Orlox fleet staggered. Their command ship had been destroyed. "Now, go," Ilara shouted. The human fleet surged forward, using the distraction to launch a final assault. With the flagship gone, the Orlox fleet began to falter. Their once unified strength crumbled as they turned to retreat. The humans pressed their advantage, refusing to let the Orlox escape. Within moments, the Orlox forces broke. They were no longer the unstoppable juggernaut they once were. Their retreat was swift, and as they fled into the darkness of space, the humans had secured their victory. As the battle ended, Ilara stood on the bridge, breathing heavily but filled with pride. The Orlox had been defeated, not by overwhelming strength, but by the strength of the human spirit. "We did it," Sarah said, her voice full of awe. Ilara nodded. "Yes, but this is just the beginning. The galaxy has seen our strength, and we will defend it." Humanity had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. The Orlox Empire had been humbled, and the galaxy now knew that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. The war was over for now, but Ilara knew one thing for sure. The humans would never stop fighting for their place among the stars.